In Meditation 4, Descartes takes up the problem of error, human mistakes. Why do we human beings make mistakes? Now, you might think that that shouldn't be a question for Descartes. After all, at the moment we are doubting just about everything we ever believed to be true. And while we might be confident as individuals that I myself am a thinking thing, a finite substance, we are finite, limited. Our capacities are quite constrained. So perhaps it shouldn't be at all surprising that we are subject to errors. But if you look at Descartes' project as a whole and keep that in mind, you'll see that Descartes, in fact, was quite optimistic about the prospects for our human knowledge and for the advance of science. We see already that Descartes wants to admit as knowledge only anything that can be known with absolute indubitable certainty. That is to say, all knowledge in principle, according to Descartes, should be a priori. And so the foundations are going to be a set of indubitable a priori propositions. And we already have the basic ideas here. The idea that the mind is a thinking thing, that body is an extended thing, and that God is an infinite thing. Now, Descartes' vision for the future was that all of the sciences eventually would be able to be demonstrated in the same way that we conduct mathematical proofs, that in every area of human investigation and human life, we would be able to proceed with the same kind of surety and with the same kind of surety and certitude that we find in mathematical proof. And so error indeed is something that has to be explained. It's a theoretical problem for him because theoretically, since all knowledge is a priori, and since the potential extent of human knowledge is indeed vast, it should be possible to proceed without making mistakes. So how do mistakes happen then? Well, human reason is indeed limited, and that he reaffirms. And as part of this, we see that Descartes understands a belief, anything that we affirm to be true and we believe to be true, as essentially a combination of two things. So two things happen in a judgment. First of all, there's the formulation of the judgment, sort of the proposition that we want to entertain as being true or false. And next, there's the affirmation that it's actually true. So this is rather interesting. There seems to be a kind of an emotional element in belief in Descartes' view here, although he doesn't explore that much further. And he doesn't really associate it strictly with emotion. He associates this with the will. So we have to look at something first as a proposition, some sort of a proposal for something that we might consider to be true. And in addition, we must, as an act of will, affirm, yes, I believe that is indeed true. So these two parts are there. The rational part, the part of the reason, and the part of the will. So these are two particular functions within the human soul, the human mind, the reasoning function and the willing function. So what happens in the case of error is that we entertain a proposition, a possible truth, rationally by the use of the reason. We are anxious to come to conclusions, to make discoveries, to move on. And while our reason is limited, our will, which Descartes says also is from God, our will indeed is unlimited. There are no limits to what we can wish for. And so the will can outstrip the understanding. We've got a finite understanding and an infinite will, and this is what leads us into errors. That still, of course, leaves open the theoretical possibility that if we're very careful about our procedures, we can keep the will in check and only affirm such propositions as we really have the rational evidence for.